Hi, back again, part of the series. We're going to be looking at file management or project management. You'll find in the beginning most people don't really worry about this, but as you actually get going on a project, or even as you sort of get going within your career, you find that it becomes more and more critical that you manage the data that you've actually got. In this project we're going to be looking at how we're going to put the filing structure together and how we're going to manage the data of this project. Now what I have done is I've got some files set up over here. I've just got it in a new folder. We are going to be sort of managing those, but I've also got another thing available which I've actually put in here as my jobs. Now what I've done with this one is I've actually made up a bit of a template with all the different files and data structure in it, so I can use this over and over again, so I don't have to keep sort of typing this out. But what we're going to do now for you is go through the setup process. Now one of the reasons why you need to sort of manage your data is you need to be able to keep consistency throughout the project. As the project grows, you get more and more files, you need to be able to put those in the correct area. The other thing is it will save you time, especially if you're actually looking for files. You know exactly where they are inside the project. Another thing is it will simplify the project's usability when all your files are managed in the right way. A couple of other things: it will preserve your data. It means that the data that you put in here can be sort of saved, it can be archived, and it can be preserved for future use within the project. And the last thing, it will manage all the documentation of your project in one spot. And I suppose the last thing I sort of look at is, you're working with files within your project, but it's only you working on it. It's a lot easier to manage that. But if you have multiple personnel working on it, for example inside a company, it becomes increasingly critical that you manage your data so that everyone has a clear understanding of where to find the information on a particular project. First of all, we're going to create basically the first part of this structure. What I like to do with it is I like to put all my projects in one spot. So this particular project, we're going to be looking at it as a group project, and because it's dealing with RMIT, if it was my own business I wouldn't put this in there, but because it's dealing with RMIT, I'm just going to say, look, these are all the projects for this year, which is 2011. Okay, I always put underscores. I don't like leaving gaps between names, but that's only something I've done over the years because it helps remove any confusion in naming anything. And also, if you put it onto a network, some systems don't like the spaces between it, but also you're able to narrow down your search functions if you can use an underscore as part of your search criteria. So it is R, capital M, I, T, so it's my RMIT, and again underscore, and I'm going to call this one jobs. So I know all of my RMIT, or all my jobs, are going to get placed in there for this particular year. Now, the next thing I have is I need to list this in clients. Now, if you have one client, it's easy, it's just one. But if you have multiple clients, you'd actually put all your clients' names in this level. It makes sure that all your clients' information is structured together. Now for this particular one, it is you are your own client. So I'm actually going to call this one, again, right hand click, new folder, and I'm going to call this one your class. If it's a different class, that's fine, just name it whatever your class is, underscore, and then I'm going to call this one my class. Now, as you notice there, I have used upper and lower case. I like to do that so that I don't have to use a space. You could go my space class or my class altogether. Now this is all the client is, which is my class. If you've got multiple classes, you might want to put all your different classes in there and store them all in one area. So we go enter, And basically that is the client setup ready, done. Now I'm going to go inside that again. Now in this one, the project we are working on is going to be River City, and for this particular project it is a house project, but I'm going to call it River City, and then inside that it will be sort of narrowed down, or all the information regarding this particular housing project of River City we're going to be placing inside there. If you have another house or another project that might be Plain City, I don't know, it depends on the job, again you would add another folder which is the jobs or the projects folder, and add all the data inside that. So let's do the next one here. What was it? River City. Now part of this naming structure, so that I can search through all my documents easily, I like to put my client's name at the beginning of the project name. So I know we're doubling up because we've actually put the client there, but I'm going to put which is my client's name, and underscore. I'm going to call the project name, which is River City. And the last thing I like to put at the end of this, because it is a project, is a date. The reason why I put the date here is it does give a timestamp. So again, if you want to search through all of your projects, you can search for projects that have a particular date attached to them. Now the way I do the dates is in reverse. I like to do the year, the month and the day. The reason why I do that is because when you have your search criteria in place, or even if you have multiple projects over multiple years, you can narrow that right down. And because most of the computers do a alphanumerical listing, by putting the year first, make sure that all the information is grouped in that year first before it puts in the month. If you do the day, month and year, it will be all over the place and it makes it harder to find and search for. So the date is 2011. I'm just going to put 11, then I'm going to put the month, which is 07, and then I'm going to put the day, which is say 12. So that there is the date in reverse, and it will give you something to do the search criteria for, because you can do the underscore 1107 and it can give you a search of all the projects that were done within that month. And again, the underscore is a really good help to narrow down your search criteria. So once that's in place, we go enter. That is our project area. Now inside this project, all the information needs to be stored. So again, you've got the jobs, you've got the client, and you have the project that's there. Now inside this, we start to break down the data a little bit more. Now I've broken the data down into 3 different sections. Now this is the way I would do it. If you have a system that works for you, or a better working system, my suggestion is to work out how you're actually going to do this so you can keep consistency with your data management and follow that protocol. And again, this is what I've done over the years to try and manage the data effectively. I've tried many different methods, but this is the method I've found works a bit better. So the first folder I'm going to put in here is a folder to put all my data files, and we are going to break that down a little bit further, but at the moment that's where our data is going to go. The next level of folders I'm going to be putting into place are drawings and working files. These are the files that I'm actually going to be doing in AutoCAD, and these are files that I'm going to be doing to do any drawings. Now these files could be anything from the drawings through to supported data. For example, if you've got contour data that needs to be converted, it will also go into this area once it's actually narrowed down and once it's selected. So the next one is, I'm going to call it drawings. Enter to make sure it stays. And the last one I'm going to be doing here within this section is where I'm going to put all my archive information. Okay, as you're moving through the job, I like to be able to archive the milestones within a project. This is very useful, especially when you either have something go wrong, either data gets corrupted, or even if the client changes their mind and then you get right near the end of the project and they say, I want something back from previous that you've drawn. Now, if you don't archive it and you just delete it, it means that you need to redo it or redraw it again. So this is basically looking at version control within inside the overall project, but I do it in a way that looks at milestones within inside the project. Now, milestones could be a range of different things, okay, but the milestones I'm looking at are concepts, working on the drawing in the midsection, and then the final drawing will also be archived and placed into this area. There are other milestones, and if you're doing a large project, those milestones probably will be set at the very beginning of the project, and what you do is you archive and name these according to the milestones that you've actually planned. So this section, I'm actually going to call this one, what is it, zip, IVE, archive, and all our archival information gets placed into that area. So there's our three main structure or folder structures within inside a project. We're going to work on the data section next, but this data section I'm going to divide again up into three areas, and these are things that can be changed, but it depends on the way you work. This is the way I've done it anyway. So the first section I'm going to be looking at inside this data file is correspondence. The correspondence could be any information that is sent to you by the client, and even though you might have it in the email, not everyone within inside the project use has access to your email account. So this is a good idea to place all the information and correspondence from a client into this area. That means it's all placed together, and other people working on this project can actually see the correspondence that is required to complete this project. Correspondence. The next folder I put in is one I call notes. Now, notes are basically anything that's collected about the project that might be used internally inside the business, or you might find something online, or you might have some handwritten things that you might want to scan in, and drawings that you might want to scan in and just place into this area here, so that people again working on the project can come over and see any types of notes that have been done on it. And the last thing I am going to put in is going to be reports, and I'm just going to call it specs. Reports and specs, or specifications if you want to put it like that, inside the project. Sometimes these are gathered by yourself, or they could even be gathered by a client, and that client is giving it to you, but it is important information that is required in building this project. It is good to put them all into this area here, so you're able to see what, or if there has been any reports or specifications supplied to you to do as part of the data of this project. So that's the three that I actually put in. I don't go any deeper than that, and I just basically put all the information in there. And the next thing I'm going to be going to is drawings. Now, in your drawing section, there are two areas that I actually break this down into. The first one I call as model build files. This is where I put anything that I need to build the drawings and use inside the actual drawings themselves. Sometimes you might have link files like photographs or images that need to be put into the document. This is basically where I'll put all that information. But it is shared information to the files that you're working on. So model underscore build, and that does range, but it's basically anything that's linked to the drawings that you're working on. The next thing I actually put in here is another folder and this folder is called plotted files. Now quite often as you're working on a project, the client or someone might ask you to plot out something that could be used as a demonstration, it could be used as a resource for somebody else to use within a project, or it could even be sent off to somebody else, another business or whatever. But any files that come off my documents, I plot them into this area, and I keep all of that, because if you've sent something off to a client and they make some changes or anything like that and they give it back to you, you need to see what the original document you gave them was. Or there could even be a dispute over something and you've said, look, I've printed this off and I've given it to you. You can actually go back to the file that you plotted off, and it's a way of confirming and checking. So all the plotted information you put in there, whatever the document name is, and I put a date at the end again so that I know the date in which that was done. Maybe you could put a time in there or version, again that's up to you. But they're basically only two, and then inside this folder here I place all of the AutoCAD files that we're actually going to be working on. So all our original ones are here. Now you might add another section in here if you've got different versions running. I sometimes put a folder in there called old, and I just drop all my older files in there, but it depends on your project. Not all projects have that, but if it does need it and you want to clean it out so there's less confusion, drop the older files in there, and that means this will be part of the archive as well. Now again, I'm going to go back out of that because we've done the drawing sections, and our zip and archive has nothing in it because as we archive something it will get placed into this area. Now I'm going to go back basically to our project here, and what I want to show you is I've opened up this particular collection of files as examples of what the client might give to you, or what might sort of come about from this exercise. Now I better pull it up here again. Now as you notice, I've got file here and folder called AutoCAD registration. It is a HTML file. That might be something you've saved off the internet, and you notice it actually has two folders, but it's part of a resource, or it's part of something that I've seen that could be useful in this project. So in that, when I think about it, it will need to go into your data files. It's not correspondence, it's not a report, but it's a note. So what I'll do is I'll just come down here, select both of those, and I'll place them into my notes area, and now we know that that is part of one of the notes from research that I've been doing. The next thing I'll look at, that's a Word document that the client sent me, and as you can see here, this is the saved email. See the email? That is the saved email that the client has sent me. So with those two, because they are data and it is part of the correspondence, I can put it into that area of the file structure, and now I know where my correspondence is. Now there's a couple of other things here. We've got house scan TIFF, and we've got some Riverview notes. Now again, it's a note which I need, or I might have typed up. I'm going to put it into my notes section there, but this Riverview contour data is data that I'm going to be using inside the actual drawing itself. Now this could have come off those notes over here. Okay, it could be these notes here that I've trimmed down and only got the data for, or it could have just been sent to me by the client. Now I know that it's just a text document, but I've named it so that I can actually put it into my drawing. See how I've got build, model build files inside here, because it is data that I'm going to use or have used for this contour drawing here. I'm going to put it into my support documentation here and go back out. Now you can see here, this is my contour, land contour drawing that I've done. It's in there. This is a plotted document that I've done, so that will go into there. And the last thing is Riverview house scan. Now that is a document that the client sent me and I've scanned it in. Now it's not part of this build or model, but at the moment I'm just going to put it into my data files under specs, okay, the actual layout of the property itself. So it all gets placed into their correct areas, and now our folder's all gone and all our data's packed away. With this, we've got a directory structure through here. We know our jobs are here. We know our client is there. And we also know that the information, there's our correspondence from the client. Here's our notes that we've collected from the client. There's some specifications there of the house drawing that we've put together. Now we're going into our drawing area. We know this is our contour. You can see there is some contours there. We've got our contour plots from there. We have a printout of it that's been sent out, and you can see I've actually put version 1. And I always put, if it's been sent out to the client, I always go the out at the back there. But again, this naming protocol is up to you. Now, you can see here that I have planned on how we're going to manage this data. All our jobs get placed there. All our clients get placed in our jobs. And if we had any more clients, they would be in there as well. We've got the actual projects are inside here, and if one client has multiple projects, they'll all be there as multiple projects, which you can see. And then inside that will be all the data that is related to that particular project. I have renamed those files from the beginning with the correspondence. I have tried to keep consistency. You can see River City, put some sort of naming protocol in place for documentation, but I've found this way here seems to be the most effective. Again, any notes, it's all in there, and it's a lot easier to find. That means if anyone else comes on this project, they should be able to see how it's put together. We know if I want to have a look at a drawing, we go into drawings. Now there's a couple of things I want to just talk about the name that I've given this file here. We've planned the data out, but when organising your files with your documentation, I try with the working files have consistency in the naming of it. Here we've got the file extension. Regardless of whether you're working on a Windows environment, a Linux environment, or even a Macintosh environment, I always use the extensions. .ewg, I can automatically tell that that is going to be an AutoCAD file. Now you notice at the beginning of my file, I also have the same naming protocol. You can see here I've got the client's name in place. I haven't got the full name, but I've got an abbreviation of it. It's up to you how you do that. I tend to like to abbreviate and have abbreviations exactly the same on each client. The next thing you see in place is the project name. It's called River City, and as you can see here I've added the description of this particular drawing, and this one's called Land Contour. If you'd like, or if you had another one called House, because we are going to be doing a house later on, I'd put in there exactly the same CIV River City _ house in there, so I know that this one's the contour one, the other one is the house. And the last thing I have put on the end of this is a version control. Now I've done that for a number of years. I just keep it simple. You can put a date in there, but it gets too long. The dates are actually up in here on your project anyway, but the version is the current version I'm working on. In any milestone that's reached, or even any major changes inside a project or inside a drawing, I add the version to it. So if I do a major change, if I do a minor change, I might say V1.5. If I do a major change, it will be V2, V3, V4, V5. If it builds up, delete the older files, but you have a version in place. The other thing is, when you're printing this documentation out, or when you're giving this to a client and it has a version on there, the client and yourself can synchronize the information so that it gets consistency in what information you have and also what information the client has, and you're able to sort of get an idea of exactly what drawing they're looking at by this version control in the end. It's basically the way I do my naming of projects and files with inside projects. The last thing I do want to show you is basically this archiving. I'm going to archive the drawings and I'm going to archive the data files, because they are the two main areas that can change or will change with inside a project. Drawings more than anything, your data probably not as much once the client has given you all the information, but it's still good to archive this data information as the project moves along. To do this, it is pretty simple. All I've done is I've got it in folders. I'm going to select both those folders and I'm going to right hand click on it, and I'm going to go send to compressed zip folder. Now you have these other options because I've got WinZip loaded on this, but at the moment I'm just going to use this simple thing here by going OK. Now what it does is it grabs the first file name you've got here, it zips both these files into one zip archive. Now the next thing, you need to do a couple of things. One, because it saves me typing, I go to the project name and I go copy. I go back into here and then I select it and then I go paste it. Paste the project name in there, plus you need to add the date. So the 11th, 07, and it might be the 15th, okay, which is the date on which this has been archived. Now there is one more thing I place in this folder before the date. I like to put the name of the milestone in which you've achieved at this point. So in here, this particular milestone might be concept underscore date. Click the return button, and now this has been named correctly. And all I need to do now is drop that into my archives. I can see this archive project has been completed. We've got the project client name, we've got the project name, we've got the concept, which is the milestone we've reached, and we also know the date in which it was actually reached on. If you open it up, you can see inside you've got your data files and you've got your drawing files. But that has been archived, it's all compressed into one file, and as you can see it's got the zip extension in, which means it is compressed. And that is pretty much how you do the archiving with inside this particular project. And then once everything's finished and the client's paid for it all, then you might do the final one, which is the complete project with everything that's placed into one area of your job and a way of tracking your documentation throughout this project. If the client or if anyone needs to find out information without really opening it up and looking at all this information, you can get a good idea on the overall view of this project, what milestones were reached, what dates that were achieved on, and what projects and client. Now that's just a quick overview of file management. Again, you might have your own strategies. If you have got a different way of doing things, by all means use it, but you need to be consistent. Now, it's okay in the beginning of a project to not worry about this, but as the project grows, it becomes more and more critical that you actually have some sort of file management and data management system in place so that it makes your job a lot easier, and it also makes sure that if there are multiple people working on inside a business, they can actually work on the document as well without being confused or without misreading the data that's been put to them. The other thing is, if you are going into a business, they would have their own criteria or way of actually doing this as well, and you need to learn and understand how they do it, and you need to follow their criteria correctly. You'll find if you don't, the boss will be on your back. And part of this course, I will be looking at this folder structure as part of your assessment, and it is important that you actually do follow something. Okay, so I hope this is a valuable lesson. If you've got any inquiries or need to ask me any questions, by all means have a chat with me and I'll be happy to sort of help you through any of that. Thank you very much. Bye.